Hello guys and welcome back to Compounding Everything. There can be no doubting how much uncertainty there is in the market recently. And of course, with that comes short selling. So in this video, we're going to briefly cover what short selling is, how you can do it, and what the top 10 most shorted stocks in Australia are right now. Anyway, let's get this one started. Now, I do have to say here that this is not financial advice. There is a disclaimer in the description below. I'm going to assume from this point forward in the video that you have read the disclaimer, you understand it, and you agree with it. Otherwise, unfortunately, this content just isn't for you. I've always found it interesting to try and establish some kind of connection between a short selling and a stock price potentially falling. And although it seems like that is a completely ridiculous thing to say, I mean, obviously they go hand in hand, right? Well, it's not actually the case. Believe it or not, most of the time, some of these stocks that are actually short sold really heavily don't end up going down. Now, for anybody watching this video that doesn't want an explanation of what short selling is, please use the timestamps in the description below and you can skip forward to me getting into what the top 10 stocks are that are short sold in Australia right now. However, for those of you that are new to investing or short selling in general, here's a brief rundown on what it is. Essentially, this is where you are betting that a share price will go down and not up, meaning that you profit when the share price decreases. So here's an example of how short selling would work. In this situation, let's say you wanted to short sell this stock at $58. The first step is that you believe the share price will fall. So you sell 1,000 borrowed shares at $58 per share, and then luckily enough, the share price actually falls to $42. So then you decide it's time to get out and close that position. So what you do now is you buy 1,000 shares, which in this situation would have resulted in you making $16 profit per share. Now I know that's a little bit confusing, but essentially it's the exact reverse of you buying and selling a stock. Your broker, generally speaking, your broker is saying, we're going to lend you this position. We're going to lend you the position that we have so you can short sell it. So what are some of the advantages to short selling shares? Well, firstly, you could potentially profit in a falling market, which coincidentally is probably why so many stocks on the ASX right now are so heavily short sold. However, that is not the only advantage. Of course, you can use short selling as a hedge. What that means is that you could place a short-term sell to offset any long-term positions you may have that are underperforming. One of the many reasons to hedge using short selling is that it might actually be a handy tool for those needing to protect against short-term liquidity losses. However, there are some disadvantages to short selling. The one that I want to focus on here is risk. Essentially, your potential for loss is unlimited. Let me explain. Say you're entering a non-leveraged position where you might buy sort of 10 shares for $100 each, meaning you spend $1,000 on that purchase. Well, if that share price goes to zero, you can only lose $1,000, right? However, when you're short selling, there can be no limit on how high a share price can go, meaning that you could be left holding a very large leveraged negative position. And trust me when I tell you that this is not a nice feeling. I've been there. So you really need to be careful when considering short selling a stock. Now, before I move on here to the top 10 most shorted companies in Australia, keep in mind that not every company on the ASX or any market around the world can be short sold. There is a list of ASX approved companies in the description below for you guys to check out. I've also included links to ASIC's short selling regulatory guide and their short selling reporting obligations documentation below as well. Now, if you guys do have any questions about short selling, feel free to comment below and I will do my best to answer any of those questions or potentially maybe contact ASIC themselves. However, let's get into the top 10 most short sold companies in Australia right now. I have cheated here a little because number 10 and 11 are 1/100% away from each other. So I'll include them both here kind of as one. So number 11 and 10 are Zipco and Bank of Queensland. Now first, Bank of Queensland doesn't overly surprise me here. And I mean, this isn't an in-depth analysis on each of these companies. However, for those watching the market over the last few years, you'll know that a few of these companies have appeared on this list many times. Bank of Queensland is definitely one of those companies. However, what did surprise me is number 11, which was Zipco. Of course, you guys will know all about Zip. I mean, this is Afterpay's little brother who has for the most part taken the market by storm in the last year. But why are they so heavily short sold? Well, your guess is as good as mine. However, I would say that maybe investors are starting to wrap their heads around some of the kind of overhype surrounding this sector at the moment. And for those wondering, Afterpay is actually all the way down this list at number 222, which I'd love to say surprises me, but it really doesn't. We all know my thoughts on this sector at the moment. Now, coming in at number 9 is Nearmap. For those of you that aren't as familiar with Nearmap, they offer a range of mapping products to enterprises and governments around the world. And there's not really too much to cover here. I've never really looked into these guys in any meaningful way. However, for whatever it's worth, I have noticed they've been on this list for a while now. So we're going to leave those guys there and move on to number 8, which is Clinical Pharmaceuticals, who have had 7.95% of their stock short sold recently. I know absolutely nothing about this company. In fact, they're one of 2 companies on this list I've never even heard of. So if you know more about these guys and why they may be one of the most shorted stocks in Australia right now, let me know in the comment section below. I'd definitely be interested in finding out what's going on here. Coming in at number 7 is the stock that has sat on this list for a very long time, which is Oricobra, who are currently short sold 8.24%. I remember nearly 5 or maybe 4 or 5 years ago as well that they were sitting around 5 or 6% short sold. And if you look at the chart, you'll see that those shorts actually had a pretty rough ride for the first year or two from that point in time. However, it has been smooth sailing since. And in fact, shorts must obviously still think there is more to come off here. So it will be an interesting one to watch play out over the next couple of years. Now, coming in at number 6 is hopefully you doing me a favor and pressing that little thumbs up button below. It is easily the most effective way of supporting this channel, and it would mean the world if you guys could just tap that little guy for me. Now, actually coming in at number 6 is Webjet, who are short sold a whopping 9.56%. Now, this one obviously isn't too surprising short term. I mean, this is what's stopping me from buying these guys and adding them to my portfolio is the fact that they're currently pretty much closed down throughout COVID, which is a pretty big concern for anybody wanting to enter a new position short term like me. However, what did surprise me here is that Flight Centre, their, I guess, bigger and maybe more exposed brother, came in way down the list at number 31. I think they were short sold around 5%. Now, yes, I guess on face value, that does reflect my personal views a little bit on these 2 companies. However, it is still surprising nonetheless. Now that brings us to number 5 on our list, which is Ingham's Group, who are currently short sold 9.73%. And I don't actually recall these guys being on the list in the past, in saying that it's possible I just didn't notice them. Now, I haven't put too much time into Ingham's for a couple of years now. However, I do know that they supply a large amount of products to small and medium businesses. And throughout COVID, this would have been hurting them big time. Now, I'm sure there are other reasons for them being so heavily short sold in positions here. However, like I said, I'm not overly familiar with them recently, and I just am not in a position to really guess in sort of any more detail as to what might be going on here. So what do you guys think about Ingham's? Do you think there might be value at these levels, or do you think that you agree with the short sellers and it's time to get out? I'd love to hear what you guys think below. Now, coming in at number 4 is News Corp with over 10% short positions. Now, News Corp do have 2 listings on the ASX. One is ranked at 157 on this list, and the other is ranked at number 4. And I've never had much interest in this space, and honestly still don't. If you guys would like to know more about News Corp, I'll leave a link in the description below. But like I said, this isn't really one that interests me. And to be honest, in the current landscape, it doesn't surprise me that both of these listings are probably short sold a little bit. Now, coming in at number 3 on this list is a company that is actually now suspended via a bankruptcy notice, which is Speedcast International. Now, for those of you that wondered before, I said there were 2 companies that I've never heard of before. Well, this was the second. Now, there's not too much to cover here, except that short sellers obviously had this one right, with over 11.71% of the stock being short sold in the past. However, hopefully some of those short sellers close their positions, because just like when you purchase shares in a company and they go bankrupt, the same goes for when you short sell them, which is you may not actually get paid out. So you always want to close that position before their doors close. It's kind of an interesting situation, I guess, for short sellers, where you have to toe that line of, you know, or you believe at least that a company is going to do poorly short-term or long-term, but you don't want them to go bankrupt, because then you potentially will lose your money as well. Now, this brings me to number 2 on our list of the top 10 short sold stocks in Australia, which is Myer Holdings, currently short sold by 11.9%. Now, for me personally, this isn't overly surprising. I watched my local Myer store deteriorate over many years and finally closed recently. The company has struggled and more recently failed in maintaining revenue growth, which has resulted in obviously a decline in earnings per share and a decline in return on equity. Obviously, Myer is far from dead at this stage. However, I can understand why so many are running a short position here. Which finally brings us to number 1. Coming in at a whopping 13.4% short sold, which is Kirkland Lake Gold. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, how can a company producing gold be so heavily short sold? Well, if you take a look at the chart, you'll see these guys are at all-time highs, just like the gold price. Obviously, short sellers think that the stock is significantly overbought and that gold will in fact not continue on its recent rally. However, this one really did surprise me, and I mean, I don't know the particulars of Kirkland. However, I was surprised to see the number 1 shorted stock on the ASX being the number 1 hot commodity in the world right now. And I've told you guys in the past, I'm not a commodity guy, so this might be one to dig your heels into yourself and do a bit of research and figure out what's going on here. I know that I probably am going to do the same over the next couple of days, just out of curiosity to see what might be going on with these guys. So there it is, the top 10 most shorted companies on the ASX right now. Now, if you guys would like me to make a video covering sort of short sold sectors or the ASX 200 and the most short sold stocks there, or potentially international short sold sort of positions, just comment below and I will consider putting something together if enough of you are interested. Now, of course, for those of you that haven't seen it, I opened the Compounding Crew last week. I'll be announcing later this week what the new Compounding Crew perks are, and I think you guys are going to be very happy with the outcomes here. So if you are interested, feel free to check out the link in the description below, and more importantly, read the disclaimer that is next to the link before you click the link or consider donating to the channel. And of course, thank you so much to the 134 of you that have already decided to donate to the channel and join the Compounding Crew. I will be providing you guys with a private update very shortly, either later this week or early next week, on our next steps. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the new format, let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe and more importantly, absolutely destroy that like button. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.